Ready for a deep dive today? We're getting you prepped for a career in waterway construction. Think big projects, canals, dams, taming those rivers and oceans.
Really specialized stuff. It's where the typical construction world meets the power of water. And today we'll equip you for those interview questions, using, of course, RoleCatcher's awesome guides.
Like a roadmap. And it's more than just, memorizing. We want you to get what those interviewers are really looking for. So how about this one? It's common. Tell us about your experience in waterway construction. But what if you're kind of new to this specific area?
That's where we talk transferable skills. Construction is construction, right? Whether it's a high-rise building or, like we're talking about, a breakwater. Think back. Did you run into unexpected problems on a project? Ever had to manage a tight deadline with your team?
So even if you haven't built a dam, just being able to explain how you've handled tough situations, that's important.
Yes. Highlight those moments when you adapted, found a solution, went above and beyond. That shows them you can learn and thrive, even around water.
And this is where I think RoleCatcher's AI can be super helpful, right? It can look at job descriptions, find those exact skills employers want, so you can tailor your answers.
Exactly. Let's say safety conscious comes up a lot in the job posting. RoleCatcher will pick up on that and suggest weaving in examples of, how you put safety first on past projects.
Smart. And speaking of safety, here's a big one. How do you ensure the worksite is safe for everyone? Workers, visitors, everyone. Why is that so crucial in waterway construction?
Water just adds a whole other level of risk. You've got the usual construction hazards, but then you add in how unpredictable water is. One wrong step near a cofferdam, for example.
That could be really bad.
Exactly.
So what's the best way to answer this? What do they want to hear?
They want to know you're not just reciting safety rules. Go beyond that. Tell them about a time you saw a potential problem, a hazard that maybe others missed. Or maybe you were part of putting a new safety procedure in place that made things better.
So it's about showing that you're already thinking ahead, especially when you're working around water.
Yeah, being proactive about safety. And RoleCatcher's AI can give you feedback on this. If you're being too general, it'll let you know. Add those specific examples to really show you're aware.
Like having your own interview coach. Okay, moving on to something more skill-specific. Can you describe your experience working with heavy machinery, like excavators or backhoes? That seems pretty straightforward. Any hidden depths there?
There are. Pay attention to what machinery they mention in the job description. Match your answer to that. If they're asking about excavators, don't just start talking about your bulldozer skills, even if they're impressive.
So tailor it, even if it means brushing up on certain things beforehand.
Right. And don't be afraid to get a bit technical. Talk about the challenges of operating, let's say, that excavator near water. Maybe the soil conditions, any stability issues. Show them you've thought about it.
This is where those RoleCatcher guys can come in handy, right?
Yeah.
To break down the key skills.
Absolutely. They've even got modules on those specific machines you'll find in waterway projects. So you'll be prepared to discuss the technical stuff with confidence. It's about making those connections for them, showing you can use your skills in, a waterway setting. And speaking of, this question really gets at that. Have you ever worked on a project that involved being in or around water?
So more than just a yes or no, I'm guessing, what kind of experience should someone highlight? Let's say they haven't actually, built a canal before.
Think broader. Maybe a large drainage system or something with lots of irrigation. Even, honestly, installing a pool has some overlap. Dealing with water pressure, making sure the drainage is good.
It's about drawing those parallels, showing, understand the basics.
Exactly. And focus on those learning moments. Did you ever have a problem with water flow? Something that made you change your approach? Or maybe you had to adapt how you'd normally do things because the ground was waterlogged.
Real world stuff. That's what they're after. Shows you can think on your feet,
Right.
which is important in construction, right? Especially around water.
For sure. And another thing, you can actually record your answers with RoleCatcher, just to practice. Their AI can analyze how you're talking. It even picks up on if you hesitate a lot or use too many filler words.
Makes a difference. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Okay, on to something essential for this kind of work. Concrete. How about, can you discuss your experience with concrete pouring and finishing? Why is that such a big deal in waterway construction?
Concrete is like the heart of it. So many of those structures, dams, bridges, those huge walls holding the water back, it all comes down to concrete that's done right.
So what should someone focus on when they're answering this?
Get specific. Any specialized techniques, mention those. Underwater pouring, different curing methods depending on the water, or working with high-strength mixes, the kind made for marine environments?
Yeah, a sidewalk is very different from like the base of a bridge that'll be underwater for years.
Big time. And if you don't have experience in one specific area, don't worry. RoleCatcher can help you find related skills to talk about. Say you haven't done underwater pouring, but you're great with concrete testing, quality control, that kind of thing. Still really valuable, shows you get how important it is.
Connecting the dots. Now let's talk deadlines. Always a factor in construction, right? The question is, how do you make sure work gets done on time while still meeting those quality standards?
It's a balance, you're right. You can't rush it down, but you can't miss those deadlines either. Interviewers want to see you understand that.
So how do you answer that well, without sounding like you're okay with sacrificing quality or time?
Talk about being organized, knowing how to prioritize. Do you use project management software? Have you come up with systems for tracking progress, spotting potential delays early on?
Showing them you're not just, going with the flow. You've got a plan, but you can be flexible too.
Right. This is also a good time to mention any experience with quality control. Projects with lots of inspections, testing, that kind of thing, demonstrates you don't cut corners, especially on water infrastructure.
Yeah, it's got to be right the first time, especially with water involved.
Mhm.
Okay, let's talk materials. Big part of these projects, obviously. What if they ask, can you talk about your experience working with different materials, the kind used in waterway construction, like steel and timber? How do you handle that?
Well, you got to go deeper than just the basics. Anyone can say, sure, I know what steel and timber are. They want to hear about, like, actually using them. Have you ever worked with treated lumber? The kind that can handle being wet all the time? Or maybe you've done welding, securing steel out in the elements?
So even if you haven't used those exact materials to build, say, a cofferdam, you can still use those experiences. Show them you get it.
Yeah. And doing a little research beforehand can't hurt. Look into what materials are common in your area. Like, are there certain erosion control fabrics or geotextiles that get used in waterway projects near you? Mentioning that shows you've done your homework.
Good tip.
Mhm.
Now here's one that's always relevant, but especially with these big water projects. Tell us about your experience working with a team on a construction project. What are they really getting at there?
It's more than just saying, I'm a team player, right? They want to see you can collaborate, especially when things get tough. Waterway construction, you've got a lot going on, tight deadlines, things change.
So give them a real example, a time you had to overcome some kind of obstacle as a team, maybe weather delays or a last-minute change to the design.
Exactly. How did you communicate?
Mm.
Delegate tasks. Work together to find that solution. Did you have to deal with disagreements, different personalities? Those details matter. And actually, RoleCatcher has stuff for this too. Modules on teamwork, communication, how to talk about them in an interview.
It's like a cheat code for job hunting. Okay, back to the skills. Can you talk about your experience with excavation and grading work? Back to basics, kind of.
For sure. Excavation and grading are often like the very first steps in a big water project. They want to know you've got that foundation.
Okay, so what's important to highlight here?
If you've operated that heavy machinery, excavators, graders, definitely mention it. But even if you've done more of the hands-on stuff, you can still talk about that. Understanding soil types, reading blueprints, how to work safely during excavation.
Shows you get how important those first steps are and that you can do them right.
Exactly. And all right, last one for today. This one gets at something that's becoming more and more important. Tell us about your experience with erosion control and sediment management.
Yeah, got to protect the environment, especially with these big projects.
It's huge. Interviewers want to see that you're not just building something, you're thinking about the impact, on the surrounding area.
So even if you're not like an environmental engineer, you got to be able to speak to this.
Absolutely. Have you ever worked with silt fences or sediment basins? Those help stop runoff. Do you get why it's important to stabilize slopes, replant vegetation after you've disturbed an area? Even knowing the basics shows you care about responsible construction.
And if you haven't done much of that specific stuff, you can always mention how you've stayed up to date, right? Like reading industry magazines or taking courses.
Exactly. It all comes back to showing them you're always learning, always trying to improve.
This has been awesome. Really helpful stuff today. We talked about those transferable skills, got into some of the technical stuff, and even covered the environmental side of things.
And remember, being prepared is key. RoleCatcher can give you that extra boost. Their guides, the AI feedback, the practice tools, it's all there.
They make it so much easier to walk into that interview feeling confident. So to everyone listening who's got a waterway construction interview coming up, good luck. Show them what you're passionate about, talk about your skills, and go make a splash in this field. Until next time, stay safe out there and keep aiming high.